Hi there, this is Computer Science 30S. This is the Scratch module. This is lesson 4 of the bubble sort. So now that we've looked at lists, which is the Scratch version of arrays, sorting lists is an obvious process that may need to be required. And sorting is a very complicated process. There are lots of different algorithms, many different sorting algorithms that range from inefficient to very efficient. Inefficient ones tend to be easy to understand. The inefficient one, so we begin with the easiest, most inefficient one, but the easiest to understand, and this is known as the bubble sort. And if you watch this animation right here, which I'm going to click on, we'll see if you can figure out how this process works. I'll just let this run here for a minute or so. So you can see here that the 8 bubbled its way all the way to the end. So basically what you've done is you've gone through the entire array, found the biggest one, put it at the end. So each time it gets to a pair of numbers, here are the 5 and the 3, and here are the 5 and the 1, it checks to see if they're in the correct order. In this case, they're not. The 1 and the 5 switch places. It goes to the next two, the 5 and the 6. These are in the correct order, so are the 6 and 7. We leave it alone. The 7 and 2 are not in the correct order, so it switches them. 7 and 4 are not in the correct order, so it switches them. And it checks the last two, and they are in the correct order. We now have the 7 in the correct spot. The 3 and the 1 are compared. They are switched because the 3 and the wrong spot. The 3 and the 5 are in the correct order. The 5 and the 6 are in the correct order. The 6 and the 2 are not in the correct order, so they're going to switch them. And now the 6 and the 4 are going to have to switch places again. And we're going to have the 6 at the end, and we've basically got the 6 in the correct place. And of course, these final ones have to be checked, but they are obviously in the correct order. And this continues along until you've got everything in order. This is known as a bubble sort because the numbers bubble through the top. And if you look at the animation on the next page, okay, you can see here, it looks like this. All of the higher numbers are bubbled to the top. I think this will play again. This is obviously a much faster version of the bubble sort. So a bubble sort is a simple sorting algorithm that works by repeatedly stepping through the list to be sorted, comparing each pair of adjacent items and swapping them if they're in the wrong order. The pass through the list is repeated until no more swaps are needed, which indicates that the list is sorted. The algorithm gets its name from the way the smaller elements bubble to the top of the list. Because it only uses comparisons to operate on elements, it is called a comparison sort. Though this algorithm is very simple, most of the other sorting algorithms are more efficient for larger lists. This one's actually quite slow, and you can look up bubble sorts if you want on Wikipedia. Here's the article on bubble sort. And Scratch also has a discussion about how bubble sorts work as well. So you can look at those on your own if you choose to. Here's the step-by-step example. For the most part, we just go through each pass here. And if you want to look at this on your own, I would suggest that you do. We've got the numbers 5, 1, 4, 2, 8. So we look at the first two elements, the 5 and the 1. So we have to swap them. So now it's 1 and 5, 4, 2, 8. Then we look at the next ones here, the 5 and the 4. They're in the wrong order, so we swap those. Becomes 1, 4, 5, 2, 8. Look at the next two, the 5 and the 2. They're not in the wrong order, so the 2 and the 5 switch places. And then we compare the 5 and the 8. They are in the correct order, so we do not switch. Now, since these elements are in order, the algorithm does not swap them. Note that the biggest number in the list has bubbled to the end. We've now found the 8. And we have to go through a second pass and go once more. Check the 1 and the 4. They're good. Check the 4 and the 2. Not good. The 2 and the 4 have to swap, and so on. And it took 3 entire passes to go through the array in this particular case. And I would encourage you to have a closer look at that on your own. Here's the bubble sort code for Scratch. As you can see, it's reasonably complicated. It's kind of hard to follow without comments, and so let's look at the next page where there's some comments. Once more, we should always be commenting our codes. Here it is here. I'm just going to Let's zoom in a little bit so we can see better. So when sprite 1 is clicked, I set pass equal to 0, I set swaps equal to 0, and I'm going to repeat until pass is greater than 0 and the swaps is equal to 0. So what that does is it keeps looping until you've made at least one pass through and there have been no swaps. So the pass number has to be bigger than 1 and the number of swaps has to equal 0. In other words, I've gone all the way through and I haven't had to swap any. That's when the loop is done. I set item equal to 0. What does this do? It resets the index back to 0. Changes the pass number by 1. So I increase the pass number. How many times have I gone through all the lists? And I set the number of swaps equal to 0. We reset the number of swaps to 0. Now I repeat to the length of data minus 1. This is called the inner loop. This checks items up until the second last item. The last item is checked in comparison with the second last item. You don't need to check the very last one because there's nothing to the right of it. You only have to check up to that second last one. For example, back here, I only need to check up to the 7 because the 8 gets compared with the 7. If I try to check the 8, there's nothing to compare it to, and your program's going to crash. You don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to repeat all the way up to, if there's five digits in the list, I'm going to repeat this 4 times. I'm going to change the item by 1, that's the index, and I'm going to check if item plus 1 of data is less than item of data. I check to see if the swap is needed. Is it less than or is it greater than? If the next one, that's item plus 1, if the next one is less than the current one, what do I have to do? I have to swap them. Now, to swap, you can't just switch them, because if you put one on top of the other one, then the first one will disappear. So you actually need a temporary holding spot. So I'm going to set the value. I'm going to set the value to item plus 1 of data. And then I'm going to replace the next one of data with the current one. And then I'm going to replace the temporary one, which we've called value. I'm going to replace the current one with the temporary one. Okay, just with some numbers there, I'm just going to show you how that works. So if you've got the numbers, let's get a color here that's going to work. If you've got the numbers 5 and 3, okay, so I'm going to set value to the next one of data. So now I'm going to set value equal to the next one. I'm currently comparing the 5 to the 3, so I'm going to set the next one to value. So I'm going to make value equal to 3. I'm going to replace the next one of the list with the current one. So in other words, this one becomes 5, and you can see here, if I didn't use this temporary one over here, I would have lost a value 3. Then I replace the current item of data with the value. Then this 3 goes in here. And now I've got them in the correct order. I've got a 3, and I've got a 5. And I change the number of swaps by 1. I made a swap. And I keep repeating that until I get to the end of the data. I'm going to repeat that as many times as I need to. Once I've gone through that double loops, the broadcast of the list is sorted, and you click on Clear List to sort. Okay, so that is a bubble sort. I would strongly encourage you to have a closer look at that. I would like you to now create a new program, brand new, no game here. It asks how big you want a list, let's say maximum of 25 spots. Just places random numbers in the list. You click on the sprite to sort the list. Whether you're operating in Scratch or BYOB, Scratch has Scratch the Cat. The BYOB guy is a different name, see if you can find that out. Create a second sprite that is like a button to delete all the items in the list. There's an example program that you should follow, the one that I've just shown you. And once again, be sure to include comments. So basically what I'd like you to do is create a bubble sort routine, much like this one here. There is one way to make the bubble sort way more efficient. Note that after the first pass, the biggest item is bubbled to the last spot on the list. Suppose that you have a 10-item list. This means that the next pass, you only have to check the first 9 items since the biggest one has been moved to the end. So the next times through, you'd only have to check items 1 to 8, since the 9th and the 10th one are the 2 biggest items. So see if you can change your code here to be a little bit more efficient. so that it doesn't go all the way to the end. And I'll leave you with that little challenge question. Okay, that's it. Good luck with your bubble sort.